I'm Ilya Ponomarev, former member of Russian Parliament from 2007 to 2016. Currently, I am political representative of the Legion Freedom of Russia and member of the Executive Council of Congress of People's Deputies. So I am running what is called a political center, which is like a joint venture between Legion Freedom of Russia and National Republican Army. National Republican Army is one of the resistance groups which is operating inside Russia. And the objective to create this political center is to provide the political representation for these militant groups, because they, for obvious reasons, cannot do it themselves. If we judge just by the probabilities, the number one scenario, the plan A, which is the most obvious scenario, is then when Putin is gone, that the power goes to Mikhail Mishustin, who is the current prime minister of Russia. That's a constitutional way. And Mishustin is a type of guy who is considered to be a so-called system liberal. So he is has moderately liberal views, but at the same time, he is totally within Putin's system, so-called technocrat. It could be a very dark revolution, so non-systemic change with a Prigozhin-style scenario. So when Prigozhin is gone, but there are other people like him inside the country, and they all aren't, and they're quite popular because they've always been highlighted on the national TV, and they kind of were fighting for the country. So they have their momentum right now as the war goes. But I think there could be a democratic revolution, and it could be a combination of peaceful protests on the streets of Russian cities, but it would never be effective if it would not be supported by the real military force, and that's Legion Freedom of Russia, and that's the guerrilla movement inside the Russia resistance movement. That's what we're trying to develop, and that's, I think, is the only positive scenario when we can guarantee there will be no more Putinism after that. Putin is a kind of a spider who sits in the middle of the web, when all the elements of this web are interested in having him alive, because he is like a universal arbiter. He's not a dictator which mandates everybody what to do. He makes the decision, pulls the strings, because he's a KGB guy. That's why we're always debating with the West about what is the most effective sanctions policy, that we need to achieve the split within the elites. But Putin is always offering something to Russian oligarchs, to wealthy business people. So he's trying to get them on his side. So we need to provide not just a stick, but also a carrot to take them out. And that's very important, so that the system would start to collapse. Look, I never felt really safe. And not only in Ukraine. I had a very close friend of mine, Alexander Litvinenko, who was killed here in London. And it was all happening in front of my eyes. What can we do? We are at war. We know whom we are dealing with. Without Ukraine, no major attack may actually happen, because you cannot get in Russia a certain amount of explosives and the equipment and sometimes training, so it has to be supported by some state actor. But at the same time, the state actor cannot do it without people in Russia, because they need people on the ground, they need people who can do reconnaissance, they need food to have foods on the ground. National Republican Army said in public that they were involved with Dugina attack, Dugin's family, and then Tatarsky attack. And then I know that they were involved in several other activities inside Russia. But again, they are very cautious about saying something in public, because it's their security. With the part of the resistance movement which is connected to the Legion, what they were saying in public, they were highlighting their involvement in the attack on the military base in Vladivostok, where they blew several of the fighter jets. Then they were advertising one pretty large attack in Urals. I don't remember where it was. I believe in Chelyabinsk or in Ekaterinburg. There was one attack on factory that they were advertising. And they were advertising numerous minor attack. That's what NRA was never doing. They never wanted to be associated with minor attacks. They were also doing, because that's training and that's like testing people, their resolve and commitment and whatever, but they never like took credit for it. But Legion was doing this, and Legion in general, they have different tactics. NRA is a small group, but it's I would say more grassroots group, which is growing from inside Russia. And right now, Russian FSB made unfortunately significant process in wiping out just anybody who was connected to Ukraine to a slightest degree. There's relatives, was traveling to Ukraine. They're like putting a magnifying glass on them, and that's why to have Ukrainian agents who would be doing something in Russia is very difficult, and that's why this resistance movement is growing. And at the beginning, Ukrainians were not paying attention to its existence. No good Russians. Right now they do. And that's why right now, if you just look at the statistics, the number of the attacks and the magnitude of the attacks this year has grown dramatically, because we found a way how to cooperate properly. Well, I don't believe in the doubles, because I think that's the kind of rumors that are being spread by Vladimir Putin himself. Because when you believe that there are a lot of doubles, you don't know whom to attack. And you think that the attack on Putin is pointless, because you don't know whom you will kill. And it's the same thing as about health. I think that they are deliberately spreading rumors like, oh, he is almost dying, so that everybody would get used to these rumors, because they never come to some real end. And then when there would be a real problem, nobody would believe it. I think that after Putinism would be dismantled, Russia would no longer be an empire. It still is, but it would not be. It would be transformed into a national state. But for this, you need to fundamentally change the insides of the country, the way it is built. Secondly, I very much hope that we will be able to reset the statehood fundamentally, so that there would be no more unilateral leader of the country, and we will have a lot of preventions to make sure that it would not get back to where it was. And that's the way how we as Congress of People's Deputies, the shadow Russian parliament, has designed the new constitution. And that's how we are shaping all the new legislation. And that's obviously a historical moment when it can be passed, because if Putin would not have started the large-scale invasion in February 2022, it would be an evolving political process without such radical shifts, and definitely it would not get into this violent stage. We was connected to preparing right now. We need to identify the momentum when to strike. Ukraine, I think it would be a slight as relatives, was traveling to Ukraine. They're like Putin in Ukraine, glass on them. And that's why to have the West Ukrainian agents who would be doing some consolidated around the idea that Americans would force Ukrainians to sit down for a ceasefire, and they hope for it. And also Russian opposition makes the same bet, and especially this part which is here in London, They totally resigned already. They say Ukraine should capitulate, and our case is lost. So, they all resigned, but not the people who are fighting.